Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining, whoever is online. Welcome to the third episode of Talk About It. My name is Anushree, and I'll be your host. I think by now everybody is aware that this show is about showing some unconventional life journeys. The courage that drives the passion, and how it brings an awareness and at the same time a comfort in standing out. Like we all talk about it कि कुछ अलग सा करना है, बट ये जो कुछ अलग सा करना है ये डेफिनेटली इजी नहीं है. इट्स नॉट वेरी क्लियर कट फॉर्मूला, बिकॉज कन्वेंशनली हमारे पास ऐसा कोई एग्जाम्पल नहीं होते. बहुत मेहनत लगती है, जजमेंट्स होते हैं, ओपिनियंस आती हैं, विच ब्रिंग्स अ सेल्फ डाउट टू आवर सेल्फ, जहाँ पे हम कंफ्यूज होते हैं whether we are doing the right way or not, whether we should be playing safe or not. But फिर भी we all work towards it. Why is that so? Okay, we'll discuss on that. आज इस एपिसोड में हम फिर से बात करेंगे about yet another unconventional choice and inspiring life journey. I would like to welcome man of our hour here, Sapan. Hey, Sapan.
Hi Anushree, how are you?
Good. Okay, so by profession, Sapan is an IT engineer, and he has been writing books. So he has released like 3 books so far, and the thing that intrigues me is his choice of genre where he writes the books. So his TikTok leading era में जहाँ views, number of views, subscriber count, channel पे, and Kacha Badam is considered very cool. He has been reading Upanishads, reading mythological books, and writing thrillers about it. So, Sapan, ये तो सबको पता है यहाँ पे कि you write books. But while researching, I found out some thought process that you have been paying behind these writings. So I would like to play a small clip for the audience to understand कि जो एफर्ट जा रहा है, जो ये बुक हमारे पास आउटपुट आ रहा है, उसके पीछे जो छोटे छोटे थॉट प्रोसेस है वो कैसे सपन के हेड में चलते हैं. Just hang on a bit.
Sure. Looking forward to the clip.
Yeah, it's a surprise to Sapan also. Okay.
और क्योंकि इस बुक में एक जो मुद्दा है जो सॉल्व करने को करी उन लोगों ने, वो है जो कन्या भ्रूण हत्या, फीमेल फर्टिसाइड. उसको मैंने हिट करने की कोशिश करी है कि एक राजस्थान की किंगडम है, कुशान राजा हुआ करते थे, बहुत बड़े देवी के भक्त हुआ करते थे. आज वही किंगडम है जहाँ पे ज़्यादा भ्रूण हत्या हो रही. राजस्थान का सेक्स रेशो बहुत ख़राब है. तो इसको ही मैंने सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करी है कि आप इतने बड़े भक्त हैं देवी के, आपकी पूरी हिस्ट्री रही है देवी के भक्तों की, आदिशक्ति की इतनी बड़ी हिस्ट्री रही है, बावजूद इसके लोग किस तरह से दिग्भ्रमित हैं, किस तरह से मर्डर कर रहे हैं सिर्फ इस बेसिस पे कि लड़की है वो. तो इसको मैंने इस तरह से सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करी है. तो एक पर्पस मेरा वो भी रहा है कि कन्या भ्रूण हत्या पे एक डायरेक्ट अटैक हो. जो मेरी हीरोज हैं 3, उनमें से एक शक्ति सिन्हा नाम की एक ऑफिसर है. तीनों में सबसे ज़्यादा जो फिजिकली एक्टिव, सबसे ज़्यादा फिजिकली फिट है, जो लोगों को मार सकती है सबसे ज़्यादा, वो उसी को दिखाया हुआ है. और दिखाया है कि किस तरह से उसने मार्शल आर्ट ट्रेनिंग ले रखी है जिस वजह से वो इतना आगे आई है. तो एक रीज़न मेरा पर्पस वो भी था इसको सॉल्व करने का. इस वजह से मैंने राजस्थान का एक लिया क्योंकि वहाँ का सेक्स रेशो काफ़ी डिसमल है. नॉट टू अटैक देयर ओन कल्चर, बट इस तरह से मैंने सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करी है उसको.
All right. So
That was very nice.
So that is what I wanted to show our audience, just to get an idea कि एक बुक में probably हर एक writer, हर एक character के पीछे there is a thought process that comes across, and during this show we'll talk about those kind of thought process. So without any delay, Sapan, I would welcome you again on this show, and I'm sure ये ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा जो एक दिन आपने सोचा कि बुक लिखना है एंड यू राइट अ बुक एंड वो हिट हो गया, ऐसा तो बिल्कुल नहीं है, आई एम वेरी श्योर. सो प्लीज लेट आवर ऑडियंस नो कि कैसे ये स्टार्ट हुआ, कैसे ट्रिगर हुआ, कैसा आपका बिगनिंग हुआ, यू नो, एंड देन वी कैन
So,
गो ऑन फॉर.
yeah. I mean, थोड़ा सा मुझको पढ़ने में इंटरेस्ट छोटे से ही था. मेरे लाइब्रेरी वगैरह में बुक्स स्कूल कॉलेजेस में पढ़ता था, सो आई हैड एन इंटरेस्ट इन रीडिंग. एंड देन ऑल्सो मुझे माइथोलॉजी में भी काफी इंटरेस्ट था. मेरे फादर को काफी इंटरेस्ट है माइथोलॉजी में. इट्स नॉट जस्ट रीडिंग दोस थिंग्स, बट कुछ टिडबिट्स लेकर आते थे, बताते थे मुझको कि इट्स वेरी नाइस ट्रिविया, तुमको बता रहे हैं, कुछ और बता रहे हैं. सो ही यूज्ड टू टेल मी ऑल दोस थिंग्स.
Yeah.
And then while I graduated, I had a blog page, जहाँ पे मैं थोड़े
Okay.
से ये tidbits यूज करके सिंबोलिज्म के अराउंड खासकर कि नमस्ते
Okay.
कर रहे हैं, नमस्ते का क्या सिंबोलिज्म है, या फिर हम लोग अगरबत्ती जला रहे हैं, उसका क्या सिंबोलिज्म है, if we have, you know, the bells in the temple, तो उसके सिंबोलिज्म के पीछे कि बेल्स का शेप ऐसा ही क्यों होता है, और क्या रिलीजियस सिंबोलिज्म है, क्या उसका साइंटिफिक सिंबोलिज्म है. I used to
Okay.
write blogs on those. And those blogs used to be quite hit. मेरे blogs publish हुए थे, Times of India में हुए थे, Hindustan Times में हुए थे. They were published in a lot of online and offline portals.
Okay.
And then when the audience of my blogs grew, one of them, or like a few of them, suggested that you should write a book, because blog me you can put out anything. You can put out all what you know, and it's just like a paragraph. You can try to make it interesting, but it's more like a trivia feeding kind of a thing. So they thought कि अगर आप इसको स्टोरी की तरह बना के लिखोगे, more people will be interested in reading what you are writing. And that's when this idea of writing a book came up to me.
Okay.
But then the first thing was like, what should I write a book on? Is it should be like
Yes.
some kind of a essay kind of a book जिसमें blog की तरह मैं लिख रहा हूँ, or it should be a
Right.
story, and I thought that suspense is something which people are really hooked to. A good suspense book, people won't put down before reading to the end of it.
Right.
तो अगर एक अच्छी सस्पेंस बुक लिखो और उसके बैकड्रॉप में माइथोलॉजी थीम रखो, I think people will be more interested in reading them, and that's how the first book, Finders Keepers, came about.
Okay. So, but that would be the thought. So now you are like good to go ki हाँ, you should write a book about that. But writing a book is a very long process, right? So, how it started towards, you know, the logistical things as well. Like, you have been working in IT since long and probably has no awareness कि कैसे क्या process होता है. Like literally आज के शो के पहले I have been reading books, but कैसे publish होता है is something जो कि probably सपन से बात करके मुझे पता चला है. So I would like our audience to know also कि जो प्रोसेस है, जो टेक्निकल प्रोसेस है, वो सब करने के लिए, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट अ सिंपल थिंग. सो बहुत सारे लोग सोचते हैं कुछ भी लिख के कि या अपने पास कुछ लिख के कि हम इसको पब्लिश करेंगे वन डे, बट देन यू नो फाइंडिंग आउट दैट प्रोसेस एंड देन राइटिंग इट डाउन, कैसे, हाउ डिड यू फिगर दिस आउट while being committed to your responsibilities, that is your IT job and your families as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you're right. There are things that you learn gradually. There was a difference between my first book and my third book. और अब मुझसे कोई पूछने आता है कि how should I publish my first book and all. So I have a different perspective of things now. But definitely, I mean, because as I said, I knew I used to read a lot of books, so I knew कि मुझे कैसे अपनी book को structure करना है. So writing was there, like I would structure my book in a very interesting way, chapter wise, कि हर chapter को एक end पे इस तरह से छोड़ो कि next chapter के लिए लोग hooked रहेंगे. But when I completed the manuscript, then I just went through the internet and I found कि लोग कैसे pitch कर रहे हैं publishers को. The fact of the matter is कि for new authors, most of the publishers don't really care about new authors.
Yeah.
So definitely there was a bit of a problem there, because I knew कि मेरे पास एक अच्छी book है, but how to put it out to publishers?
Right.
How do I make them read it? That was an issue. But thankfully, Leap Start Publishing came around, and they kind of liked the book, and they decided to publish it. But as I said, अभी तब में और अब में difference है कि now I have a book agent, Suhail Mathur. He's quite good. He's quite good with both for the new authors as well as for experienced authors. Because he's a very good agent, he has a lot of knowledge about book publishing and publishers and authors. So he knows which book to publish to which publisher, and he knows the back of the trade. So now there's no more that of an issue. But yeah, when I started out, there was definitely a problem because you know that you have a good book, you know that it's a good subject, it's a good. But if publishers won't even read it, you can't ask them, you can't force them to
Exactly.
read
Like
it.
it's not like you have a connection there, right? So initial steps, I'm sure, would be challenging.
Yeah,
For,
it was more challenging in the first book. By the time
okay.
I wrote my second book, I knew Suhail. So then it was no more challenging. It was just about taking time. कि जितना time लगता है book publish होने में, right from the editing stage to the final stage. But otherwise, it didn't take a lot of time.
So in this, Sapan, I would further like to ask, of course, you are like you're working and you're at the same time, it's okay. Nowadays, you can find things over internet and then try to pursue something. But how do you manage? Like like you're away from the country and you want to release a book in the country. How do you manage all this? Like tell our audience about your support system that works behind this. I'm sure ये अकेले का काम नहीं है.
I mean, that's a very good question. It's a very simple, but yeah, but a very, very deep question. Definitely, what you see in the book is just like one line in the top. But if you read the acknowledgement section, you will know कि कितने लोगों का इसमें एक पीछे हाथ रहता है,
Right.
for the book. Um, Definitely, when I'm writing the book, there's a lot of support from my wife Suruchi. क्योंकि
Yeah.
उसके बिना support के बिना I can't. You can't do it. I have a family. There's job. There's like a lot of responsibilities at home,
Yeah.
outside home. Um, and when the book is published, for the publishing, the marketing, the launching, the biggest support comes from my father, Umesh Saxena.
Yeah. Okay.
He retired a few years back. But before retiring and after retiring, उनका kind of a project रहता है. मेरी नई book आती है. So he has this project कि वो अपने सारे जितने भी contacts हैं उनको ring up करते हैं. कुछ लोग retire हो चुके हैं, कुछ लोग अभी भी हैं. He asks them how do I market this. He takes those steps to market my book. So उनका एक project kind of रहता है कि उनको करना है. So definitely there's a huge support system. These two are like just two names. There are more people, lots of friends, lots of family members who kind of go out and put it out on social media, go out. एक मेरा friend है मुझे पता है कि he would just go out to bookstores and just
Okay.
randomly ask in front of everyone कि 10 reader है आपके पास में. And then when a book publisher would either say no or yes, and then I would say, okay, it's a really great book, आपको रखनी चाहिए, या फिर it's a really good book, I would like to purchase. That's how he
Right.
would market. So yeah, there's
Right.
a huge support system of friends, family, which keeps on working all the time.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, I'm really thankful to all of them.
Exactly. So this is something I would like to like bring in notice to everybody, to our audience, कि कैसे एक support system is so important, becomes so important, and once you have it, then things like this happens where Sapan is now like the national bestseller in India for his books, and so ऐसे unquestionable support if you have in your life to follow your own passion, that makes such a huge difference because there are so many of people around us. Like I've been talking to people on this subject since some time now, and सबका ये है कि like family अगर समझे, family अगर help करे, so it all becomes a bit organic, and but then it just takes time. So yeah, it makes a lot of difference, and yeah, I'm glad you have a support system there, Sapan. So, moving on, I wanted to also know why mythology? Like, I know you have an interest in reading mythology and everything, but like, it is interesting that you choose mythology and history and then wrote about it. Like, if you can explain our audience that why you only choose mythology, is there some perspective around that?
So there were two reasons primarily. The first one was that because it is a genre that I have a hold on, I knew
Okay.
that I could write better on it compared to other subjects. So it kind of fits in naturally. I mean, if I start writing, and because Hindu mythology is so diverse, there are so many pieces to it. There are so many symbols. You can find ancient temples all across the country, And when you visit these temples, because I did visit a lot of temples for my research,
Huh.
you can see symbols on the walls. You can see there are certain practices which are just, local to those temples. Some
Yeah.
practices which are not in other temples. So you try to find out the reason कि ऐसा क्यों है कि यहाँ पे ये practice है दूसरी जगह पे नहीं है. So that kind of curiosity and that kind of little bit of a mystery वो mythology का by itself आती है, खासकर Hindu mythology का,
Hmm.
because it's really really diverse. So I had a lack of, trying to find out reason to everything. I would visit these places, the temples, or even history. I would visit the Kaling in Odisha, जहाँ पे अशोक का final board हुआ था. And I would visit those places. जो वहाँ के guides होते हैं उनसे मैं पूछता था. I used to discuss कि क्या story है इसके पीछे, back story क्या है. लोग कहते हैं यहाँ की नदी लाल हो गई थी जब कलिंग वॉर हुआ था. What really happened? So
Sorry,
that
Sapan, I would like to just interrupt for a while. I think I'm getting a feedback that the mic is not so, like if you can pull out the mic a bit. Uh,
can you hear me now? Is it
yeah, I
better
think
now?
so. Yeah, better.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. So that comes naturally. A bit of a mythology factor कि जिसमें थोड़ी सी mystery भी हो plus मेरा एक natural वो रहता है, so it comes naturally. The second reason was that again the second reason was, of course, I used to think that there is, when I was writing blogs, I was thinking that these are really basic things. I mean वो जो हम लोग अपने family में देखते हैं और अपने around देखते हैं, but we just don't really take the time to understand कि ये ऐसा कर क्यों रहा है.
Understand that. Yep.
नमस्ते कर रहे हैं सबको, why are we doing नमस्ते, इसका क्या सिंबोलिज्म है, कहाँ से, मतलब why are other cultures not doing it, other countries not doing it. So so that kind of thing, I thought that okay, if I kind of try to explain it in a very interesting way, people will be interested in learning as well, and it would serve a good purpose as well. So those two
Right.
were the reasons primarily, a bit of a natural instinct to write on
Right.
mythology, and second was to like spread out the information, spread out the knowledge for a good purpose, and that's why I chose this genre.
And that is another very interesting point that I find कि आजकल जैसे हमारे जितने भी रिचुअल्स हैं across any religion and everything, हमारे household में भी temples and everything, like जितने rituals हैं, there are two kinds of observations around that. Like either you can question and rebel it, or you can question and then further enhance it. So I think it is interesting to find that there are people who are moving towards the later as well, and उसको बढ़ा रहे हैं because वही आजकल की टिकटॉक एंड एवरीथिंग में you're just finding happiness in those kind of things जहाँ पे हमें एक फेक आइडेंटिटी के साथ हैप्पीनेस मिल रही है, बट देन this is something much more deeper, and finding out the finding the roots, it just keeps you grounded, and that is a great way to go about it, Sapin. And I'm glad that through the books maybe you'll be able to change perspectives. So that is my next question कि जैसे in your video you said कि brood hatya and everything के बारे में you wanted to make an impact. How do you think, now I have two questions here. So how do you think that one, how books can change and bring an impact? That is one question. Or दूसरा कि why do you feel for that cause? Like I know it's all related to mythology, but tell our audience that why do you feel for that cause where you want to bring a change towards the female feticide or anything? Does it comes from your personal experience? या फिर it is something in general in the world that exists in world that just aches your heart. That's why you're bringing it out. So probably
So
the first question.
yeah, the reason I chose female feticide or जो भ्रूण हत्या का topic था, because
Yeah.
so I was researching on some other topic before writing the 10th riddle. I was looking for a book which was around Lord Vishnu. And
Acha.
when I was analyzing and researching, I found out the concept of Adi Shakti. So
Huh.
interestingly, what is so there was a Big Bang theory, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly, how people have related to Adi Shakti, and that's written in Ling Puran, is that Adi Shakti was simply a force. It was no physical manifestation. And when the Big Bang theory happened, and universes were created, or the universe that we live in were created, so it's known. It says that Adi Shakti was the one who created the universe. So she was a prime force, and with her energy, she created the universe. And she was the one who created, Lord Shiv, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu. She was
Okay.
the one who created Lakshmi, Lord
Hmm.
Goddess Saraswati, and then herself physically manifested in the form of Parvati, Goddess Parvati. So when I was reading I thought that, okay, I am writing about Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu a lot, and I am researching on these subjects. But here is a goddess who is kind of the mother of even those gods. So she is like the super goddess, the primary force, the first force. And that's when I started researching. And interestingly, I found out that Rajasthan was a place where the first few kings of Rajasthan,
Okay.
those were the ones who set up the first temples of, Adi Shakti and Ardhanarishwar and all those temples. They were the first kind of worshippers of Adi Shakti. And then, because we all know that there are few states compared to other states where the sex ratio is so bad, and and we know that there is a problem in
Yeah.
Rajasthan. It's just
Yeah.
not, it's local to Rajasthan. It's also with UP and a lot of
Yeah.
states. Um, and then I thought that these guys were the first worshippers of Adi Shakti. That's where this
Wow.
idea, this worship, these practices came up. And now the problem is so bad that there is a huge female feticide there, and that's where I kind of started writing into it. Interestingly, meanwhile, my daughter was also born, so I was kind of naturally connected to it as well through
Yeah.
through through that as well, personally connected to that as well.
Okay.
And that's when I started, researching and writing about female feticide and goddess, and then you're doing female feticide in the same
Yeah.
places. Um, so yeah, it was more like a idea where there is something which is affecting you in a worldwide position, particularly in a
Yeah.
few regions. And then I thought that I should pursue this subject because this is a very good cause to write about.
Yeah, probably so. Like having a personal experience, हमारे सामने बहुत सारे issues होते हैं, anyways. But then having this personal experience where you just automatically feels कि shit ये भी ये मतलब हमारे आसपास भी हो सकता है, कुछ भी हो सकता है. Probably that drives is something that's shown in your work. Hence why it comes out so well. So that's a great thing. And I would like our audience also to know. I know I asked you, but कितना time लगता है in all this research? Like how much time it takes to write the book?
For a book like the 10th Riddle, on average, it would take almost an year to write a book.
Okay.
Because I'm writing along with the job. So it
Yeah.
would take no more less than an year to write the book, where almost 7 to 8 months go into research, and then four to
Yeah.
5 months almost go into the writing. But the research has to be solid. I mean, when I put down my first chapter,
Yeah.
before that, I know in the back of my mind what the story would be, how it would progress, what the structure would be, what all symbolism I'm going to cater to, and what all pieces of mythology I would refer to. The only research that I don't do by that time of time is कि जैसे इस आदि शक्ति की book में there are 10 महाविद्यास that I talk about, which are 10
अच्छा.
forms of 10 forms of आदि शक्ति,
Okay.
जिनको काफी रिवर किया जाता है. It's different from Navdurga. It's more like 10 forms of Adi Shakti herself, which are
Okay.
very knowledgeable and used in a lot of Tantra Vidya and those things.
Okay.
So those 10 Mahavidyas, उनके जो temples हैं, ancient temples हैं, उनका जो symbolism है, that part is the only part which I do not research before writing my first chapter, and that is the thing which I go along when I'm writing the book. But apart from that, the overall structure, the overall chapter wise, कैसे मैं उसको break down करूंगा, chapter के नाम क्या होंगे, those are the things which I do the research before even putting down my first chapter.
Okay, okay. So overall, this is a very exhausting process, and then adding thriller to it probably is even more exhausting, both physically and mentally. Because I'm assuming कि एक plot लिखने के लिए, when you break down that big chapter into smaller pages, तो उसके behind एक plot लिखने के लिए, you would have been going through a lot in your head. So I have a question. So इतने सारे ट्विस्ट एंड टर्न्स एंड प्लॉट्स के पीछे हाउ डू यू डिसाइड कि लेट्स से एक page है, हाउ डू यू डिसाइड दैट नाउ दिस पेज इज कंप्लीट एंड ये मेरी ऑडियंस के लिए इंटरेस्टिंग इनफ है, नाउ आई कैन मूव टू द नेक्स्ट पेज? हाउ डू यू डिसाइड ऑन दैट?
So yeah, that's a good question. So first thing that for me is deciding is the word count of the chapter. Um, there
Okay.
should be an average word count. So I do not want my chapter to go on and on for a long time, and also it should not be
Okay.
very small. So I know कि मुझको कितना इसमें लिखना है, कितने
ठीक है.
paragraphs, कितने words around, कितने रहने हैं.
Okay.
Then it's all about that. It's always better that people are hooked to your books. For that reason,
Hmm.
always end the chapter on some note कि people are naturally inclined कि मुझको अगला chapter पढ़ना है, ये क्या हुआ, और what did just happen.
Yeah.
I should read the next chapter as well. People should always be hooked onto it. So when I'm writing it's an exhausting process. I agree, but at the same time, writing those mystery elements, writing those mystery points, and then solving those. That's a very interesting, very exciting process as well.
Yeah.
There are some high points to a book and some low points. Low points is something which is more exhausting because अब आपको fillers की तरह उसमें भरना है कि आप filler भर रहे हो, एक high point अभी भी गया है, someone got murdered, you wrote a good murder scene. Now you have to fill it up that police is coming up और वहां पे जो है वो कुछ देख रही है, and
हाँ.
in back of your mind कि पुलिस को कुछ मिलना नहीं है, otherwise your mystery is solved. So you have to write something कि पुलिस जा रही है, कोशिश कर रही है, but they found nothing.
Yeah.
Those are exhausting. But
Yes.
yeah, the mystery scenes, the murder scenes, the high octane action scenes, scenes where you are explaining what really happened, scenes where you are connecting it to the mythology. Those are
Yeah.
really interesting scenes, and yeah, you build it up in your mind first, and then you write it about. So yeah, then it's not really exhausting. It's more like very exciting. But keeping the word count is something which I always keep in the back of my head.
Yeah, but like content wise, does it plays with your head? Like, do you lose sanity in the middle of this plots? Like, कि कुछ नहीं समझ आ रहा है, or it plays with your head कि because these characters that you're building, ये जैसे आदि शक्ति के character से inspired, I am sure in all this research it would play in your head. You would have experienced things where you would have your perspectives would be questioned, and then you are struggling within yourself. Are there such experience where you lose your sanity?
There are pieces when you go about and write half of the book and something comes up and you realize कि इतना मजा नहीं आया, या फिर
हाँ.
I'm losing the plot. That
Right.
happens, and the
अच्छा.
thing that you can do is now go back and there were places जब मैं around half of the book या 3/4 book पे पहुंच गया, I realized I missed a very important point, जो कि मेरी बुक में शुरू से ही कवर करना चाहिए था, और अब मेरी बुक की पूरी प्लॉट लाइन चेंज होगी.
Oh,
Those
okay.
happens, those happen, and then in that case there are only two options. Either अब आप उसको ठीक करो somehow, और
Right.
जाके शुरू से अब उसको फिक्स करना शुरू करो.
Right.
I do prefer the latter option because that's a more that's better for the book.
Safe.
um,
Yeah.
that's safe as well. I mean, yeah, it does take time. It's very frustrating as well. But in the end of the day, it's something which is coming out of your mind. So it's not really coming out of a computer, कि जहाँ पे एक algorithm है
Exactly.
आपके सामने. So
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay. You know that you can make mistakes. A lot of times, my wife or my family members or my editor, they will find a lot of logical mistakes.
Yeah.
Those logical mistakes also have the potential to completely change the plot line of your book. And
Yeah.
when those happen, it really feels a bit frustrated because you spent 1 year, now you are seeing a lot of the issues. But it's better that people don't find it. These people have found it, so it's still better.
That's very interesting क्योंकि my next question is connected to it, and I would like audience also to see one of the comment that has come in. Uh, this from my friend Shivangi. She's asking a thriller fiction involving gods. How many lawsuits did you have to deal with?
So thankfully, I've never wrote anything which is controversial. I have tried to keep myself
Yeah.
away from writing anything anything controversial.
But
There
yeah,
have been
like
play.
India may like if you write anything bad or anything wrong, I wouldn't say bad, but anything logically or factually incorrect, then it's like a lot of problems, right? Did you had to face things like that?
I mean, I just had to face a couple of issues during my first book because I asked my one of my friends who is closely associated to Haridwar and those places, and I asked him कि जो हरिद्वार की आपकी संस्था होती हैं या जो आपके रिलीजियस प्लेसेस हैं उन पे वहाँ पे आप थोड़ा बुक के बारे में बात करो. and he did, and few of the guys came back because उसमें थोड़ा सा मैंने शिव devotees को वो दिखाया है कि they are killing a lot of people for their to establish the supremacy of lordship. And then there was a problem he had to face, and then he translated it to me कि मुझको ये हो रहा है, now what should I answer. There was a problem that he
Okay.
had to face because they were really furious कि इस तरह से क्यों दिखाया है, and you are
हाँ,
pitching it out as a book which is dedicated to Lord Shiv, and you are showing Shiv devotees as someone who are killing everyone.
yeah.
There was a lot of explanation which we had to give them, but
Okay.
yeah, nothing escalated. But those things
Thankfully,
happen. I mean, because it's related to mythology, you want the people who are more interested in mythology to read those books.
yeah.
But they are also the ones who can find problems or mistakes
Right.
with the book as well. So that happens, but nothing has been escalated to a level of lawsuit till now, thankfully. Touch wood.
That's great. But so with these critics, do you have like low points, which essay for personally for yourself with these critics coming in? Let's say it's a long journey, right? Writing a book is a long journey. So highs होंगे, lows होंगे. So जब lows होते हैं, तो how do you manage yourself? Like, do you have a mantra for yourself, or any routine or anything? How do you deal with the lows? Have you had lows?
I mean, I
Firstly,
have had lows. As far as the critics go, I have had lows. When you find one very scathing review,
okay,
which you were not expecting, because you spend 1 year writing a book. You do a lot of research. You go to places. You read a lot of text. I'm sure other authors are doing it as well when they are writing their books. But yeah, the kind of research that you have put in, and then there's a scathing review. You read it and you understand that reviewer didn't put a lot of effort into जितना आपने effort डाला, maybe that
हाँ,
reviewer didn't put a
समझने
lot of
का,
effort,
right?
and you feel bad. But over the period of time, over my 3 books and my blogs, I have learned कि जो review होता है, it's not just your perspective, it's their perspective as well. So it's not
Yeah,
just you can't judge the book based on a review, because there is certain judgment factor of the reviewer as well. It's उसकी खुद का background क्या है, how that reviewer is coming up. So there's an element to that as well. So over the period
okay,
of time, I have learned to, if there is a bad review or a good review makes you happy, bad review makes you makes you sad. But at the same time, you just extract out the information that you need. Maybe in a review there would be nothing which you can extract out, but maybe there would be something very key. उसने कुछ ऐसा बोला जो कि really आपके लिए बड़ा एक important piece था. Like one of the bad reviews that I got for my first book, the reviewer actually wrote that Sapan has put out a lot of information in the
अच्छा,
book when he should have left it to to the imagination of the audience. And that
I
was
see.
something I really liked. I thought
Right, it's a
maybe I'm over
positive
explaining.
feedback in a way,
Yeah,
right?
it's a positive feedback. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm explaining too much. Maybe I should explain a bit lesser. So those are the things. I mean, it definitely feels bad, but you just have to take the seed element out of it.
yeah.
Um, Once you are done, then yeah, you just move on to the next review.
So you just keep the positive attitude there and keep moving,
Yeah,
since it's a
yeah.
journey, right? That matters. That's great. And with this, I would like our audience to just remind, if they have any questions, just pour in the question here, and we'll do as best as we can to answer those. And I'm going to move to the next round, Sapan, that's called Moments of Truth, जहाँ पे I will ask some of the incidents जो कि आप हमारे audience से share कर सकते हैं, and you just answer जो भी mind में first incident आता है in regard to that moment. Okay, so tell me, any moment जहाँ पे you read something. Let's say, I know you're very well read, so किसी भी mythology या Veds, किसी book में ऐसा कुछ आपने पढ़ा that has become like your strength, and your perspective towards life has changed, and you feel like कि आज की generation को ये grounding rule definitely पता होना चाहिए. So do you think anything like that has come so far in your notice?
Definitely, there are a lot of such pieces.
हाँ,
Interestingly, a lot of our Hindu mythology has been written in a way जहाँ पे आपको बताया जा रहा है कुछ बहुत ही simple way में, but there is a deep meaning behind it. They are telling the story of a cow and a lion, and but behind the scene, it's something very deep.
Yeah.
But Bhagavad Gita is something which is very straightforward.
Right.
What they want to tell, they just tell it in a straightforward way,
Exactly.
and even that has
Yeah.
a deep meaning. But at least they are just telling,
Yeah.
educating you. Lot of Bhagavad Gita phrases, verses are famous.
Right.
They are more famous than others. But there are, if you read the entire thing, there are a lot of pieces where it's not that famous as well, and those have like a very deep meaning as well. So one thing which really inspires me was definitely the one where Lord Krishna says ki karm karo fal ki ichha mat karo. It's
Right.
tough,
Right.
it's a bit impractical to think of, but when you are writing a book, that has been my mantra, ki karm karo fal ki ichha mat karo. Do your best. And
Yeah.
honestly, when the book releases and the marketing phase is going on, I kind of then disconnect myself from the book. I just focus on the marketing part,
Okay.
disconnect
Okay.
from the book, and that's where the positive and negative reviews come. I just don't really matter. Then it
Okay.
really doesn't matter. So that has been something which really gives me strength. कि जो अभी आपके सामने काम है, just focus on that. Don't think कि क्या अच्छा लगेगा लोगों को, क्या बुरा लगेगा.
Right.
Focus on your work and then move on to the next stage.
राइट राइट आई थिंक ये मैंने भी समझा है कि इन भगवद गीता द स्ट्रेस इज टू ब्रिंग दैट डिस्कनेक्ट एंड देन
Right,
from the work that you're doing, and then
right.
at the same time just continue doing whatever you need. So yeah,
Right.
great. I think it just resonates with the current generation as well in a very great way.
Right.
And okay, so my next question: any पर्सनल मोमेंट या इंसिडेंट, जैसे लेट्स से कुछ हुआ आपके पर्सनल लाइफ में जो कि आपने बुक में यूज किया एंड इट बिकेम लाइक इट इज लाइक अ हिट कॉन्सेप्ट देयर. सो एनी पर्सनल incident that you have portrayed in the book as well?
Um, because the first and third were more like mytho thrillers, I had to
Right.
also like keep in my mind कि मुझको थोड़ा सा real character से दूर रखना है, and because it can get a
Okay.
bit problematic if you but my
Sure.
second book was more of a it was a romantic thriller based on it was a romantic thriller, a Spanish thriller.
Right.
There they were characters which were based out of people you can see which are around you, which are so I built those characters of around the people who I've seen, who I've known.
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
I didn't think one of those people will read the book, but somehow he did.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
Okay,
he
we have to talk about this.
then he came back asking that why did I write so much
Okay.
over that part, and I told him that between me and you, no one else knows. So I'm not going to reveal, but if you put it out on Facebook, everyone will know. So that yeah, but he's a good friend. It was more of a jest kind of a thing. But
Okay.
yeah, then I realized maybe better to get inspired, but not really write down something which has
Acha.
really happened. That close. Then
Okay.
I try to like, create my scenes rather than get inspired by scenes.
That's good. That's great. So probably you're also learning on this way of journey, right? कि अब ये try किया, ये ऐसे हुआ, then you see the results and then you move further on.
Right.
Okay. So next question. Any moment जहाँ पे like you are stuck on a plot and समझ ही नहीं आ रहा है कि आगे कैसे बढ़ना है?
Um, the way I write, honestly, and I can't speak from every author, but the way I write, I know all my major plot points. So मुझको पता है कि
Right.
अभी आगे कैसे जाना है. But the
Okay.
problem happens when something logical fallacy comes up. कि एक
हाँ.
कुछ ऐसा पीस डाल दिया था जो कि थोड़ा illogical हो गया when you move forward. And then you have to, as I said, like restructure the whole thing. You have to create the entire suspense part, and also make it suspenseful, but don't make it stupid. कुछ ऐसा
Yeah.
suspense element मत डाल दो कि लोग कहे कि ये क्या, what is he writing? This is just
True.
impractical.
True. True.
So
Yeah.
those are places where you have to really think of an. I would say it's more like an algorithm from an IT perspective, where you have to really
Okay.
think of an algorithm, how to move ahead on this algorithm. But yeah, those are the pieces where I'm just stuck. Thankfully,
Okay.
writer's block never happened to me. Um,
Okay.
when I'm stuck, I also do a lot of research. So writer's
Mhm.
block, but those logical
Okay.
fallacies, those things have happened.
Sorry, what's the terminology for this? I had no idea. Writers,
Writer's
what?
block, writer's
Oh,
block.
okay. 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 Interesting to know. There's a terminology for that. Okay, that's great. Acha, so far you've got many appreciations, right? So any appreciation which is like very close to your heart and that made you feel ki all this while, whatever is the journey, every time you write the book is all worth it.
So there's the one guy, Adarsh Srivastav. I
Okay.
especially mentioned him in my acknowledgements as well. I
Okay.
didn't know him before my first book. He was one of the readers of my first book, and he has been really appreciative. The way he talks about my books or the way he reviewed, and then he also added me on Facebook and wrote me a long message of how much he liked the book, how much the book really inspired him. Um,
Okay.
so that really kind of is a I would say life changing experience because
Okay.
you write down your book and if someone is so influenced by it, he is recommending it to everyone. He is making sure he becomes a part of your marketing team. He liked the book so much. He becomes
Yeah.
a an offside marketing element of your marketing. So yeah, those are the things which really inspire you because once your readers like it, they have gone through the entire book, gave it a 5 star, but also write something that this book really changed my perspective.
Hmm.
Got to learn so much from this book. It's really a life-changing book and things like those. Then it's really, really, really inspiring.
Okay, so that's great. Adarsh, thank you for that. Thank you for bringing Sapan Saxena into the world of book writing.
Definitely.
All right, so with this, my round of moments of truth finishes off, and I'll move to the next round that's called rapid fire. So, of course, ये एक borrowed concept है. So, just be rapid and full of fire. So, okay, I'll start. A book that you have read that has changed your perspective in life.
That was Angels in Demons.
Okay,
That was by Dan Brown. Yeah, it really
okay,
changed my perspective because that was the first book which gave me inspiration कि mythology पे भी इतना interesting एक subject पे लिखी जा सकती है किताब.
okay, okay. Good to know. अभी तक की सबसे इंस्पायरिंग माइथोलॉजिकल बुक या माइथोलॉजिकल कैरेक्टर या एनी कैरेक्टर दैट यू हैव रेड एंड नोन सबसे इंस्पायरिंग आपको क्या लगता है?
So I'll just break it down in two parts. Sorry for
ओके,
rapid fire you थोड़ा सा, but yeah,
चलेगा
the
चलेगा.
most inspiring book that I have read is The Palace of Illusions.
ओके,
It's a
या
book which is written from the perspective of Draupadi. And
द्रौपदी, या
it's very interesting because in that small book, the author has kind of narrated the entire story of Draupadi, the entire story of Mahabharata.
या
And Mahabharata is a huge subject. Mahabharata is
या
it's the
या
biggest epic of
ट्रू,
the world. But to put it down in a certain number of pages, 300 pages, and then also from the perspective of Draupadi, which was a lesser known concept, which is a lesser known concept, from the one character's
या
perspective, which is Draupadi. That really inspires me. And that has been a really inspirational
ओके,
book. And the mythological character that inspires me the most is Lord Shiv, because I'm a huge devotee as well.
ओके,
I'm really interested in, interpreting the symbolism. And there are so many symbolism across the different books, different, Purans and Upanishads and
या
different imagery. There are so many forms of him, Rudra is a form, Mahakal is a form, Mahadev is a form, so many forms of Lord Shiv.
ओके.
So that character thing which I'm naturally interested towards researching more.
And your first book was inspired by Lord Shiv, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was
Finders
a
in
kind
Shiv.
of an ode to all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Audience, please go and find Sapan's books are available on Amazon. It's great. Okay, I'll move on. I think, okay. If you want to change one thing in this world, what would that be?
Such a good question. I would want to change. I would want to people to, be inspired to read more books. Because if you compare to the previous years, overall book reading is a hobby which kind of is declining. I know a lot of bookstores that have been closed recently. A big publishing house got closed. A very big publishing house who had a lot of big time authors signed up. So I would want people to be inspired to read more books. I know it's a hobby which looks tough from the outside. To jump into this hobby of book reading, it's tough, especially in this era when a lot of content is being just presented to you in
Visual.
YouTube or in
Yeah.
Netflix, in Amazon Prime,
Yeah.
Hotstar, those channels. But you have to understand that web series or web shows, everything is being made up, the scenes, the music, the characters, the dialogues, and then they are just being presented to you. I don't think it's a bad thing, but book is something where you read and you build up all those things in your head. So it really is kind of you read a line, you read a page, everything is building up in your head. Those characters, those costumes, the sets, the
Yeah,
music, everything
yeah,
is going on in your head. So it's really something which also helps you, grow mentally.
yeah.
And it's also something which it's one of those dying things which I would really want to revive, and people to understand that this is one thing which we are losing out, which we should not be losing out.
Yep. And it just brings out that imagination also, right? Right? When you see in TV, it's just pushed to us. But books,
Yes.
may while reading, you imagine and you are in that place. And then it's
Yeah,
the work of author.
yeah, there is a reason that most of the times when web shows or web series or movies are made on books, even if it's like big Hollywood blockbusters, you would
Uh-huh.
always find people who have read those books complaining that that the show didn't do justice to the book that was written.
Yeah.
And the reason
True.
was that because when you're reading, you build up so much in your head, you cannot have that much on the screen. So
Right.
yeah, definitely, I would want people to take up this hobby more and more.
Yeah. That's great. ओके कोई ऐसा कैरेक्टर है आपकी बुक में विच यू वुड वांट इन रियल लाइफ फॉर योरसेल्फ और एनीबडी एल्स टू बी अलाइव come to life.
My two characters, which are the protagonists, one is Ishan Vajpayee,
Okay.
who I have shown ki he is a very, brilliant. He is an author himself, a very brilliant
Okay.
author, who has done his PhD and all his graduation, post-graduation PhD on, Indian culture and history, on Indology itself. So definitely
Okay.
a guy like him who can just, solve all the symbolisms at the, anytime a symbolism comes up, anytime something comes up, and he just knows how to connect. So definitely a guy like him, I would definitely want him to be. Plus, my another character who is Shakti Sinha, who is a politician. But during her college and graduation days, she did her graduation in Kerala, and she learned the fighting form of Kalyari Pattu.
Okay.
The Vidyut Jamwal, that actor,
Ah,
he can do a lot of
yeah, yeah,
stuff. He is a
yeah.
trained Kalyari Pattu fighter. So,
Okay.
yeah, a person like her, Shakti Sinha, where you are a politician, you are trying to do something good, like real
Yeah.
good politics. But
Yeah.
apart from that, she's a physically fit fighter as well. So those two
Okay.
characters I would want in the real life as well.
Okay. Yeah, audience, you have to go and literally read Sapan's book to find out about those. All right. So, my next question is a bit might throw you off a bit, but out of the three books that you have written, which one is your favorite?
Um,
Or you can
anytime my latest
rate them. You can rate them, or in
yeah.
order of your likeliness.
In my opinion, because I wrote those books, those are like three children, because
Yes.
for an author, the books are the
So
children.
you can rate your children also, right?
Yeah, but the kind of feedback I received, the kind of positivity I received, that was the best for the 10th riddle.
Okay.
The 10th riddle has also trended on Twitter once. It was on number 3 spot for a while.
Okay.
The 10th riddle has been I have been approached by a few producers as well for the rights of 10th riddle, and that work is also in
Okay.
progress.
Okay,
So
that's
the
great.
kind of feedback, the kind of response that I received from feedback, it was just enormous. So that's why the 10th riddle is my first one. The
Okay.
second one I would say is Finders Keepers, which was my first, and it's favorite because it was really close to
It's
my heart when I
personal.
was writing it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really an inexperienced writer by then. There was a lot of friction when the editor was chopping out the book because it had become so big and so enormous. But yeah, definitely that would be my second. Not saying owns the second book I wrote is some way, but it's just based on my response when I wrote
Right.
those. It was more personal, and the response I received.
Right. That's great. Okay, so I might know this answer, but I want the audience also to know that who is your go-to person when you are confused कि ये scene कैसे end करना है, नहीं समझ आ रहा है, क्या suggestion, for overwriting, or who is your go-to person?
Um, 3 I would order. Then the first I go to. In fact, four I would order.
Okay.
The first one is definitely my wife Suruchi,
Yeah.
because she is the closest to find. You can just knock on the door and just ask her.
Yeah.
But apart from that, she has a very analytical mind as well, because she is the one who finds the most logical mistakes in the book.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
she's the first person to ask the ऐसा हो रहा है, I'm feeling this problem, what should I do? Apart from the actual logical pieces that she brings in, she also brings in those things. Okay, you can just sit down and you know do these
Huh.
things. You can do
Pani
the
pilo.
discussion, those things. Pani pilo,
Yeah.
kind of. um, yeah. The second person is my father, Umesh Saxena,
Yeah.
because he also, when he reads, a lot of times he would just read. I thought that I've written something, really awesome. I would just give it to him. 2 days later, he would just say, "Maza nahi
Yeah.
aaya."
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely I can go to him because he also does a lot of research.
Yeah.
Often I tell him कि मुझको आदि शक्ति के बारे में लिखना है. Just come up with something which I have never heard. And he would ask me like, how do I know that what you have not heard? Then I say, just come up with something जो कि available नहीं है easily on internet. And
Huh.
he would actually write a big document, a 10-page, 20-page document, and he would come up, I don't know how, with pieces जो कि internet पे available नहीं थे, but he somehow did those research and then comes back.
Okay.
The third person is Suhail Mathur, my agent,
Okay.
because he has the most knowledge about the books. He has the most insight about those books.
Yeah.
So he's the one who can how to structure a book, how to um, किस तरह से इसकी marketing करनी है, कितना उसका size रखना है, those things. I can always reach out to him. And the
Yeah.
fourth person is my cousin Shruti, because she also has a lot of information about mythology, and she also has wrote a lot, kind of in the same stage as my father, but more from a millennial perspective. So
Okay.
she's the one I can reach out to in the first place. So those are the four
Okay.
people who are my go-to. But yeah, it's not
Okay.
just limited to those.
Okay. Okay. That's great. And yeah, Suruchi, for everybody's reference, Suruchi is my office, college, colleague, uh, so many things. My roommate as well. So yeah, I've known Suruchi since long time. So yeah, well done, Suruchi. And Sapan, your goal as an author, like where do you see yourself? It's not an
um
IT interview ka question. 5 साल बाद, where do you see yourself? It's just a normal question.
I mean, so it's a very interesting question. When I started out with the books, my first goal was that my book should become a bestseller.
Yeah.
My Facebook page should be verified, and I should
Yeah.
have a Wikipedia page.
Okay.
By the time my second book got, 3 months after my second book, all the three checks were done. And now I was like, okay, what next? So I thought, okay, maybe there should be a web series made on my book, or a
Okay.
book film made on my book, movie. And yeah, my third book also, because what next? That's a good question.
Yeah.
But by the time my third book has released, a few people have talked to me about the rights and everything. At this point of time, I have realized that it's a never-ending journey. You will just find your next goal once those goals are achieved.
Yeah.
So uh, myself, I just want to as someone who wrote really great books about mythology, and
Okay.
mythology, and especially the suspense book, because
Yeah.
there's no end to it. The Facebook page
Yeah.
is verified. Now what? Yeah, now the Insta page should be verified.
Yeah.
These goals just keep on changing. One of the goals which I really had, a dream was, okay, my book should trend on Twitter. And by the
Huh.
time when it was trending on Twitter, it was really high. But once, the trending died down, then 2 days later, I was okay. This
Yeah.
is now done. Now what next? So it's a never-ending journey. It's good to have these small goals, because that keeps on focus on these smaller
Yeah.
goals. But the bigger goal is definitely that people should just remember those books as great books.
That's great. I think it's coming from karm karo, fal ka chinta
Yeah,
nahi karo.
yeah. It's definitely coming from there.
Okay, that's great. And with this, I wrap my rapid fire section. And I want to bring in one comment here, which actually was a question, but I just read it out loud here from Webber, which says that what advice would you want to give to budding mythology writers from connecting with masses point of view?
So that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Mythology is something which a good written mythology would connect. definitely, because as I said, like we have been living in this culture, in this, in our households, we have been seeing those things. We just um, not always question it, and question also not from a bad perspective, but even from curiosity perspective. We just don't are not curious about it. But when someone writes about it, and when someone gives those perspective to us, we are really very inclined, naturally inclined towards reading those. Now the only question is, how do you structure your book in a way that masses find it very interesting. So
Yeah.
there are two suggestions that I can provide. First is write in a very simple, simple flow, simple language.
Yeah.
I know that authors tend to be very flowy, putting out a lot of good vocabulary, and that's good as well. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but the kind of language, and a lot of feedback that I receive from my book is that the language is very lucid, because I try to write in a language which it's easier to understand. You're already building up such a complex plot in the back of your head. You are already putting out a lot of mythological information. People might
Yeah.
just get bored, and then if you are just adding a lot of complex terminologies and the language there, uh, they might just completely lose it. So if you want to connect to the masses, just write
Yeah.
it in a simple way. And the second would be that there are so many forums, there are so many pages on Facebook, there are so many pages on Insta, where a lot of mythological tidbits are getting released. You can see the number of likes that these have. Just contact them, ask them that you are releasing a book, it's about this topic, explain it to them, and often they would come up and help you.
Okay.
So that's something which I really did. I connected to a lot of Facebook pages, Insta pages. I DM'd them. I told
Okay.
them that my book is coming out. It's on this topic. If it's about Adishakti, then I connect to pages of goddess Durga or Parvati, and especially during the Navdurga time.
Acha.
Those are things, yeah, you have to keep in your mind that you have to market your book. You have to make sure it, and it just it can happen naturally, but it rarely happens naturally. So you have to reach out to these guys. You have to reach out to those pages, dedicated pages, and
Yeah.
then tell them. So I would definitely, for budding mythological writers, I would ask them to follow, keep in touch with those pages, build up those pages yourselves, and promote your books from there. Write in a simple language, and get a good book agent. If you want to get a good book agent, you can always contact me. But having a good book agent is really kind of a guiding factor. You can just focus on your part and not worry about the other aspects.
Yeah, that's great information there. And anybody who wants to contact Sapan, here's his Instagram and the Facebook as well. So just go ahead, contact Sapan. I'm sure he's very helpful. With this, I'm coming to almost to the wrap of this session, but there's one question that I want to show as well. This is something I know as well because मैं सुरुचि की roommate रह चुकी हूँ. So tell us of our audience about your marriage, how it happened, and what is the impact of it on your writing.
Okay, my wife Suruchi and me, we share a date of birth, month of birth, year of birth, and time of birth.
Yeah.
So that's a very strange coincidence. It was almost like written. But it's very interesting that I added my wife Suruchi on Orkut. Those days it was Orkut, because we had the same date of birth. So
Yeah.
that's how I connected with her. That we have the same date of birth, and that's where I,
Then you started solving that puzzle, right? कि क्यों है ऐसा?
yeah, and gradually I learned that it's really interesting. I was born in Kanpur and I studied in Lucknow. She was born in Lucknow. She studied in Kanpur. Those things are like, there
It's
are a lot of
crazy.
those
Yeah.
things, and that's how we started talking, and that's how we started knowing each other. We were in Lucknow, so we met for the first time there, and that's where it just grew for both of us. So that's how the marriage happened, and because everyone was so connected, both our fathers are bank officers as well. So there's a lot of, when the families meet, there's a lot of tandem there, because they just know what to talk on, because they are so common
Yeah.
topics to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what impact it had on my writing profession, I would say it had a very positive impact, because Suruchi herself she doesn't read a lot of fiction, but she's a lot of, she reads a lot of non-fiction. So she brings that perspective when I'm writing a book. That for how do I make it interesting for non-fiction writers?
Okay.
There are non-fiction readers, sorry. there are people who are not just interested in reading fiction books at all, and Suruchi is one of them. Like she's not interested in reading fiction at all. But how do I make this book interesting for those readers as well? So she brings up that perspective, that maybe I should put some information here, some information there. So as far as writing profession goes, it has definitely helped. She also gives me a lot of time to do a lot of research. It's very interesting that during a vacation, which is very rare because of our jobs and all, then
Yeah.
I would tell her that I want to visit this place because of my research. I want to visit these temples. It's really kind of a conflict point because no one wants to visit, some mythologic place, which is not that famous as well, instead of going on a beach. But yeah, those kind of things she
She's
when she
supporting.
agrees,
Yeah.
she's supporting. Yeah, so it's a very positive impact, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think she's very intelligent, like she's very intellectual as well and logical overall. So she sees the greater point as well. So, yeah.
Yep.
All right. I think with this, we come to the end of this incredible conversation. Thank you, Sapan. Anything you want to say to our audience as ending words?
I would just want to say the same that I said earlier, that yeah, book reading is a hobby that is
Yeah,
on the it's on downward trajectory. It's
sure.
being an author and being an reader. It Because I've been reading books since a long time. When you see some bookstores getting closed, or hear the news of publishing houses getting closed, it really it really impacts you, because you don't really want them to be closed. You want book reading to be something which should always be inspiring you, and always which is
Right.
going on.
Right.
So definitely, and I always say that you do not have to jump onto this hobby. You have to build it gradually. Just give yourself like a month or 2 months. Go out and read my books. Maybe you will start liking book reading. But give it a month or two, and maybe it will just grow upon you. So that is
Yeah,
something I would,
sure.
book reading is like investing in yourself.
Yeah. That's great. So with this, I end this show, and my next, just for the audience to know, the next episode is scheduled for 26th of March, and I hope you all join, and I hope you all like that episode as well. And thanks again, everybody, for this support, and just go to our Facebook, Instagram pages, and email if anything, any feedback. I'm more than happy to address. And please like, subscribe the YouTube channel, so that this conversations like this reaches out to the larger group of people there, and people get motivated to actually do something good in the life which they have in their head since long. It just gives that courage. So yeah, thank you, everybody. With this, I would just say good night and have a great week ahead. Thank you. Thanks, Apan.
Thank you, Rishi. Bye bye. This was nice talking to
Bye.
you.
Yeah, same here.